Brandon Drake, I'm a consultant based out of Nashville, and up until recently, I was the only algorithm employee that was actually living there, but awesome to have our new BDR who's kicking butt, Aaron, that I get to travel with occasionally, so glad to have all the new team members we got. But so what I'm going to be talking about today is two different things. This first one, relatively small feature, but for those data managers in the company, those that are possibly setting up calculations off of fields. This is something new that has been added within 25R1 that will kind of make your job easier when you're trying to control these attributes or user-defined fields on different profile screens and just in different areas of the system. So to kind of, having text fields is not new. How we would do similar fields to what we're seeing here in the green and the red there on the right is not new, but you used to have to do this with the text field. You used to have to do this with, in order to control what's in there, you would have to put in entry masks. You would have to set that it could only be numbers or it could only be letters, and it was a very open free-form field, but was very kind of limiting when you were just wanting numbers that could possibly grow to the left or have multiple decimal places that would vary from one customer to the next. So it's that variability that has actually added, shown the need for a field related to this, especially if it's a field you're using for calculations. So if a field can be used and, for one customer it can be 2 digits left of your decimal, but for another customer it can be 5. That's something where, that was hard to control with entry masks. So in order to take a look at this, we're going to look at the old. If you see here in this text field, I'll go ahead and select one that I have. I have to put in that entry mask to basically control what that is. So this is, I'm only allowing 1 digit left of that decimal and 2 to the right. So for a ratio, that might work fine, but for a fields where they're, like I said, very variable from customer to customer, that's probably not going to work, and we'll show that here on a screen here in a second. But let's go ahead and add a new one here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this number control type. And just to further trigger people, just put like share price. Yes, let's just refresh the page. And you see here, the only thing that it's going to let me select here is the decimal places. So I'm going to go ahead and set 2, and this is only controlling to the right. Up to the character limit of the field, this number field can grow to the left as far as we want. But as we know, most fields within Acumatica are around 30 characters as a character limit when they're small attribute-related fields. Like some of your text fields are going to be bigger than that, but for this field, it's going to be able to grow for your use pretty much as you need it to. So we're going to go ahead and save this. Now, as a reminder, in order to make this show on the profile screen we're wanting to do, to show that on, we're going to have to add that to the class. So specifically for this one, I'm adding it to the customer class so that I can show it on the customer screen. And I'm going to go ahead and add my attribute I created. And I'm going to sit and watch Sanddial do its thing for a second. Okay, there we go. Okay, and I will save that. As a reminder for those of you that might not be familiar, on these different profile screens, attributes can show in a couple different places. We can be here on this attribute tab. Very common use, as Andy pointed out, in the modern UI, you being able to use them in different places. But for now, this user-defined fields section at the top, I'm going to go ahead and add that attribute that I just created. By managing my user-defined fields, I'm going to add it. I'm going to select the one I create. I'm going to go ahead and go back, and now you see here, here's the difference between these two fields. So with the old text field, we're very limited as to what we can do. No matter what I type in here, it's going to stop me at 3 characters. So that's with the entry mess. There's ways to, with redirect expressions, to kind of guide the user here. But as far as all that goes, very limiting. If I wanted to change this field, if it was, in this specific case, a big use case is if it's a value that can grow and get bigger and move, to the left more. Very limited. Now, here, my share price might have gone down a little bit, but hopefully in my, like I was talking about, I can make this go, as long as this field's going to let me to go, and that's just going to keep growing to the limit of the character limit. So as you can tell here, it is very much just simplifying the use of numbers in text fields. Again, when you're using controls and you're using things that you're trying to, limit the user, maybe you're calculating off that field, you can't have just a letter show up in there. So it's easier to do it this way than it is with the entry masks on the text field. So I'm going to move on here to my second topic. Now, again, this one is even, it's not even that much of an issue, functionality change as it is a change in how Acumatica is wanting users to use certain workspaces, specifically relating to inventory planning. And we've heard, the MRP, inventory planning, depends who's talking about it, what screen you're on. It can be, different. But as has been said, we're learning to kind of reference that whole workspace and functionality off of those 2 different terms. But what Acumatica has done as part of this release is just changed who can access these roles by default. The reason why I wanted to talk about this is they're constantly trying to improve user experience. They're trying to make it to where you can maybe use those predefined roles versus having to always create custom roles, or making it where it's a little bit more streamlined for the end user to get to the screens that they need to without somebody having to manage access rights manually all the time. So as part of that, the release notes this year talked about, or this release is specifically calling out the changes that they've made to that. But if you have custom roles, or if you're using user types with multiple roles attached to it, you might not exactly know the quickest ways to see some of that. Now, we probably, if you've been adjusting access rights by role or screen, or in Acumatica at all, you're used to seeing those things. But I like to see that in this particular instance in a report method. So one way in which we can do that, this is the normal way that I was just talking about. You either access rights by screen, access rights by role. If you've done this before, you're used to seeing this. You can see some of these ones that have been changed. They haven't been given full access. So maybe you don't want your SO admin having full access to the inventory planning display, but maybe you want them to have limited rights to some of the pages within that workspace. So that's where you're going to see these multiple rights versus a full revoked or a full granted type of access right level. But again, if you ever have any questions, a good way to do this, you can go and pull either one of these reports, access rights by role or access rights by screen, and then you can just enter in, if you want to bring it down to a smaller subset of data, some filtering conditions. And if I look at here, you'll see that at that lower level of screen, for example, this is just looking at the SO admin rights. and the different rights that they have to each of the individual screens. So again, nothing like groundbreaking, but it can very much simplify. Their hopes are that making changes like this from release to release, what they're finding out, to Angel's point, is who is working in screens more than others, who is not working in screens and maybe doesn't need as much access, or where are people submitting community tickets, or to why does this person have access to the screen, or why does this person not have. So they are taking that feedback and they are trying to apply and change those predefined roles. Now, if you have custom roles, you have custom roles. That's one of those things where if you open the box, that's where you're at. But they are trying to manage that within the best practices as much as possible.